Witness Notes 18, Isère, France, April 2021. After you have read these introductory paragraphs once, you can skip to the new, old content here. If you are listening, then the timestamp is around the 2-minute, 45-second mark. Introduction. The word settle to me carries connotations I am keen to avoid. I have never felt settled, or perhaps I cannot recall a time I felt settled. I do not feel settled now, writing this, and I've lived in the same house for 3.5 years. Without even discussing the obvious issues of colonisation, I just don't feel like I could or should settle. Better to keep my constituent parts shook up, agitated perhaps, rather than separating and stagnant. Instead, I feel as though I have been travelling for years, maybe because I have not lived in my home nation of Scotland for 8.5 years. Perhaps because I know I won't stay here forever, or maybe because I carry that concept of home in a way which differs from many. More precisely, I still think of myself as a slow traveller, globally feral. Recently, I've been revisiting places through the photographs and words I recorded when my feet crossed their soil. This is a way of reminding myself of where I have been, not just in space and time, but in mind too. It is a wonderful thing to come out of below and rediscover myself through words I crafted, through the lens of a camera, when memory has wandered in the fog for too long. Thank you, past me. When I first started sharing letters with the world in this fashion, 6 or more years ago, I usually began them with a vignette of where I was, a sort of travel diary mixed with nature observation, locking in the setting for the reader before I spoke of other things, and by so doing, ensuring that place fed into the whole. It was a useful device for a reader and myself both, but as these letters were sent to so few readers, and now languish archived behind a paywall, I thought it a shame not to share these snippets again. As such, I am going to share a short series of these sketches accompanied by a photograph from that time, sent to you in date order, beginning with the second eldest. I shall include the above paragraphs in each of the letters in this series, but I shall also include a link at the very start so you can skip ahead once you are familiar with the above words. If you are listening and similarly want to skip, then the timestamp you want to navigate to will be in the same place. Taken without these paragraphs, each is a short read, and I hope you enjoy them. Isère, France, April 2021. As the sun warms, the water flows. Everywhere on the mountainside the sound of running streams, whether tumbling and brimful of snowmelt or thin rivulets snaking to join their companions. Rhythm, rhyme, melody and music. Other than this, the sounds are mostly birdsong, each feathered bundle welcoming the spring with frantic activity. Nests are being built, relationships founded or reinforced, food collected and rivals discouraged, birds in the water, wind in the trees, creaking of branches and the humming of bees. Bright flashes of fungi litter the forest floor, the warming days and wet conditions welcoming weird and beautiful shapes and sizes. Many I do not yet know, others old friends. Tracks in the ground, traces of those who came before, drop deposits, handy markers for identification, ermine and weasel and mole. The ground has been turned over by the snouts of the wild boar, the sanglier, capable of lifting rocks weighing half their hefty body weight and more. A disturbance is excellent for the soil, aerating and dispersing, encouraging seeds to sprout. Nature's heavyweight gardeners are often accompanied by the robin, who has now also transferred his attention to the allotments and gardens of mankind. These woodlands are worked, tall giants, felled individually rather than the vast denudation of the clear-cut system. Piles of logs slumber by the road and trails, gently drying and beginning to season, often covered in bright flashes of identifying numbers or scrambles of children playing. Much of this area has altered in the last few generations. As small-scale sheep and cattle rearing became economically unviable, their pastures and slopes were left fallow, and in moved the birch, followed by others: Norway maple, linden, beech, oak, chestnut, poplar, mountain ash, larch, Norway spruce, silver fir, and various pines. Today these woodlands look older than they are, Perhaps because the land still retains a memory of their cover from long before, perhaps because it feels right. As the woods returned, so did the animals, the deer, the boar, even the wolves. Higher, the remaining flocks of sheep and goats are sometimes interspersed with dogs spread to look like the sheep they guard, but sheep with big teeth, loud barks and snarls. There are shepherds here moving the animals from slope to slope above the forests, in the places where the snow sits deepest in winter, the hillside ringing with the stone crack of the raven call, the melancholy of the eagle, and the frantic shriek of the marmot. And, throughout it all, the importance of the water, plummeting and splashing, pooling and crashing. It carries snowmelt, carries tiny, suspended, cloudy particles, the crushed rock of the glaciers, worn by centuries and gravity. It also carries those unfortunate enough to be caught in it, or those whose time came only for their bones to fall into the streams and themselves tumbled smooth, headed down, down, down. Rivers and watercourses and beaches are the perfect places to find natural resources. Things are moved, things exposed, a natural store for creation and need. Flint nodules can be found beside iron, pyrites sitting near cracked slate. It is little stretch of the imagination to see these places as the supermarket of times prehistorical, banks explored, detritus collected, driftwood stacked to be used later, clay pulled out by hand or antler tools. Water is life and always has been. It is a channel to our own history, a lane leading to our ancestors. Wars have been fought over water. Vast populations moved, sending ripples throughout history. It is all too easy to look upon a wave of refugees, the terminology liquid in itself, and not see what has created the disturbance in our ocean of humanity. Perhaps drought and failed harvests in Syria, or the Sahara pushing south, places where the flow and tinkle is no longer seen and heard. The birds themselves moved on. One can only guess how many other places will fall similarly silent in the coming decades. Finally, if you can afford to, there are currently 2 direct ways to support my work here. The first is to take out a paid subscription. The second way to support me here is to use my Ko-fi button link to send a tip of any amount. If you enjoyed this letter and wish to share it with others, please do so. I love it when someone shares my work. I also love it when you comment on a piece, really, really love it. Although I always read and appreciate these comments, during 2025 I was not as good at responding as quickly as I would like, but seeing as my word of the year for 2026 is communication, I like to think that will soon change. Finally, many thanks for reading. I truly appreciate each and every one of you who does.